What is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Jimmy James59, and the time has come to redo my best Cavalry Archer Civilizations tier list. We've had, since I did my last one, civilizations added to the game. We have seen the Cavalry Archer class of units affected both directly and indirectly by certain changes to the game. Plus, the meta is always shifting, so it's a good opportunity for us to reassess. If you like this video, I definitely encourage you to hit that like button. If you want to share your own thoughts, you agree, disagree, you want to elaborate on something I've said, highly encourage it. Definitely just drop a comment in the comment section below. And if you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed, welcome. And I encourage you to do so. I have a lot of tier lists on this channel, but also things like build order guides. I have live gameplay. I have a variety of analysis. Just pretty much any kind of deranged thought I might have about Age of Empires 2 is on the channel. Okay, now I want to get into the criteria for the tier list. And I want to start off with the scope condition. Which civilizations Cavalry Archers are included? I'm going to do something a bit of a difference from my previous tier list, where I want to include all Cavalry Archers in the Cavalry Archer Armor class. So that will include unique units from the castle, regional unique units that fall into that class, etc. The reason I'm doing this is because I think that doing tier list is not just an exercise in futility, but is helpful for gameplay. Tier lists do a nice job of helping you form a mental map of how civilizations relate to each other in terms of their capabilities along specific dimensions. And that's good to have in the back of your mind so that way you can anticipate where an opponent might go, and also understanding limitations so that you can anticipate where your opponent might not go in terms of their army composition. Now, anticipation is never a substitute for information and scouting. However, I think things that you can do to put yourself in your opponent's head and understand the psychology, so to speak, of a civilization can have a lot of strategic value. And because of that, we want to think about the Cavalry Archer class of a civilization more holistically, so that way you can form a more accurate mental map. Now, this makes comparisons a little bit more messy, and it also makes the logic of the explanation of why a civilization is in a particular tier all the more important. And let me get into that here for a second, for the second point I wanted to make. We have to think about how the game plays out over time, and to an extent, across space as well. We can't just look at a civilization's post-imperial age and then assess that, okay, well, that's where they should rank. The units in Age of Empires 2 often have peaks and valleys in terms of strengths, and Cavalry Archers are no different. Additionally, Cavalry Archers, to be successful, are often dependent on their civilization bonuses, your supporting units as well. And so what that means is that you, in this tier list, may find that some civilizations that have Cavalry Archers with similar upgrades are in different tiers, and then some civilizations with very different upgrades are in the same tier. And so again, the logic of that explanation is what's important. And the third and last thing I wanted to mention is that Cavalry Archers require a lot of upgrades. And the significance of that is that sometimes missing an upgrade is going to be not so important. And a lot of these civilizations on this list miss upgrades. But sometimes it's going to be very important. And it's really just going to depend on how it affects the Cavalry Archer itself, and also how it affects the civilization and perhaps what you're trying to achieve. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump in the list, and I want to talk about the civilizations first that we don't have to worry about. We can see in the not applicable category are the Aztecs, Bohemians, Incas, and the Mayans. Now we can start off with the civilizations that really do comprise the tier list. And we'll begin with the Bengalis. The Bengalis are interesting because they lack Cavalry Archers per se, but they have two Cavalry Archer class unique units, the Elephant Archer and the Ratha, which only sometimes moonlights as a Cavalry Archer, but to its detriment, unfortunately, even when it's doing melee damage, it still counts as a Cavalry Archer and therefore takes damage from units in the game that do bonus damage versus Cavalry Archers. I'll put the Bengalis in the C tier. Missing Thumbring in the mid game means that your Cavalry Archer class units fire more slowly and they miss a lot of shots. And for me, that's a big difficulty. You have to get to the Castle Age technology in order to make these units fire faster, and even then, it's not going to help your accuracy. So for me, I don't see how you can put them any higher than the C tier. Next up, we have the Berbers. Berbers I actually think are quite strong, and I think you have to put them in the A tier, largely on the strength of their Camel Archer, which is a Cavalry Archer class unit that does bonus damage to other Cavalry Archers. So that means that if you're up against the Berbers, you have to really think carefully about whether you want to go Cavalry Archers at all. Additionally, you also have the Genitor available, which is a Skirmisher that is also a Cavalry Archer class unit. And you have fairly good heavy Cavalry Archers of your own, only missing Parthian Tactics. And one of the recent changes to the Heavy Cavalry Archer, since I did my last tier list, was that the Heavy Cavalry Archer upgrade now provides +4 damage versus Spearmen instead of +2. And Parthian Tactics no longer provides +4 damage versus Spearmen, but has been reduced to +2. So the civilizations now that have all the upgrades but only miss Parthian Tactics are in a better position than they used to be. And the Berbers are certainly in that grouping. Additionally, you have really cheap light cavalry that you can use to support your Cavalry Archer or Camel Archer armies. And for me, the only thing that keeps the Berbers from really making it into the S tier is that I just think the Camel Archer is a bit too much of a niche unit. It's not quite as versatile as some of the other unique unit Cavalry Archer class units on this list, but remember, it is still quite good, and the Berbers are definitely one of the stronger Cav Archer civs in the game. Next up, we have the Britons, and the Britons are an easy F tier. You don't have Bloodlines, you don't have Thumb Ring, you miss Parthian Tactics. There's not a lot of reasons to ever make Cavalry Archers if you're the Britons, despite the fact that you can create them faster, but creating a terrible unit more quickly is probably not something to brag about. Coming up next, we have the Bulgarians. The Bulgarians, despite not really being thought of as an archer civ, have one of the better Cavalry Archers in the game, actually. You're only missing the last armor upgrade, which means you do get Parthian Tactics with heavy Cavalry Archers, so you're doing a lot more damage versus Spearmen. Additionally, cheaper blacksmith upgrades and a faster working blacksmith really help make this transition feel a lot smoother. You also have fantastic light cavalry that once you research stirrups in the Castle Age, which is pretty cheap, can do extra attack because the firing rate increases. And this means that you have one of the strongest Cavalry Archer plus light cavalry combinations in the game, and the light cavalry unit is the most common pairing with the Cav Archer. So Bulgarians, pretty high in the B tier. I think you just missed some more, you missed the last armor, so that is important. And you're just also missing that little extra step that's going to put you in the A tier, whereas a civ like the Berbers really do get that with the Camel Archer and the Genitor. You just feel like a little something is missing to make it into the A tier for the Bulgarians, but it is still quite good. The Burgundians are going to show up on our list also in the F tier. Again, no Bloodlines, no Thumb Ring, no Parthian Tactics, pretty easy call. Now the Burmese are a tough one. You have access to the Arambai, which is a unique unit in the Cavalry Archer class from the castle, and it does get access to Parthian Tactics. However, that's about all you're getting from the civilization because you do miss Thumb Ring and you miss 2 armor upgrades. I'll put it in the C tier. I think Arambai, if you can get a good mass of them, are very strong, but they also feel kind of squishy, especially in the Castle Age, and it can be tough to get them up and running. So for that reason, I think C tier is a pretty good spot. It reminds me a little bit of the Bengalis, but if you do get them up and running, they can be very difficult to stop and do a lot of damage. Coming up next, we have the Byzantines, and I think Byzantines for me belong in the D tier. You do get Thumb Ring, so that's nice, but no Bloodlines, no Parthian Tactics. It means that you have some decent fire support, but that's about it. And I think the unit is going to not have the durability you need in the late game, because the way Cavalry Archers often play out is that the mid game includes a lot of hit and run tactics, but in the late game, oftentimes you have to actually stand and fire and play more of that fire support ranged role for your melee units who are going in and duking it out. And the Byzantines are going to have a lot of trouble in the mid game. Alright, now we can go to the Celts, and for Celts, it's really easy. Missing armor upgrades, Thumb Ring, Bloodlines, etc., etc. Your Cav Archers are even worse than the Britons somehow, which is saying something. Turning now to the Chinese. Chinese are pretty good. I put them in the B tier. You're only missing Parthian Tactics, and you have some technology discounts, and Cav Archers require a lot of technologies, so this is quite good. Now, this used to be even better, and I think you'd have an argument for A tier if you still had the old Chinese technology discount, but that was nerfed. Additionally, I think that your army composition with Chinese, having fully upgraded light cavalry is good, but it doesn't match civilizations like Berbers, I think. And honestly, to me, I think the Bulgarians are probably a better civ because of that as well, but I do think they're still basically on the same tier. Well, next up we have the Cumans. Cumans are interesting. A or B tier really depends on how much I think you value the hip check. The fact that you do get cavalry archers that only miss bracer is, well, it's pretty bad for your late game, but you do have the possibility of spamming cavalry archers in the mid game. However, I don't think that that usually works because you have to research step husbandry to really be able to enable that. And if you do that, then you're probably gonna have to wait till later and probably miss the timing window on that attack. And if you try to do it early, you're not gonna have the eco to support it. So again, it comes down to the kip check. And for me, I think that puts them in the B tier. The Kipchak, I think, is a unit that is really misunderstood. Its mid-game is not as strong because it feels like a really vulnerable unit. However, it is very cost-effective. And I think if you can get a lot of them in the late game and really keep them as a fire support unit, they can be quite good. Additionally, I think in big groups, they're also fairly good against siege because of the extra arrows they fire. But again, I think it's all about making it to that late game, and for that, I don't think they quite make it in the A tier. Coming up next are the Dravidians. Dravidians are really interesting. Put them in the C tier just because mid-game elephant archers can be extremely strong once you get all the upgrades. Now, it's quite the investment to do so, but it's still pretty good if you can get there. Now, I think in the late game, because you miss so many upgrades and you don't have a ton of great support units, I feel like elephant archers, oftentimes you have to transition away from, and I don't think the medical core technology healing your HP is that good. I just think that the Dravidians are really missing something in their elephant archers to truly get them into the B tier. So for that reason, I think C tier is about the highest we can take them. Ethiopians are probably D tier. You do get thumb ring, you do get your armor upgrades, but you're missing bloodlines and Parthian tactics, and you don't really have any bonuses helping you out that much here. So yeah, D tier for Ethiopians. Franks are easy F tier. You miss armor upgrades, you miss pretty much everything. And the HP you get from bloodlines, sort of as a substitute, you're plus 20% HP, I don't think is really good enough to cover what you miss from bloodlines ultimately. So, easy F tier for me. Gujaras are interesting. Elephant archers for Gujaras, I think this is a good example of a civilization that has to wind up in the D tier, because even though you can create your elephant archers faster, you can make them cheaper with Casatrius, which is a pretty expensive technology in and of itself now. And you can get some extra melee armor on them, which can make them actually quite good versus, say, like light cavalry units and maybe even some other melee units that want to attack them. I just think they're missing so many armor upgrades, and the fact that they just don't play into the kind of army that you want to have with Gujaras, where you're typically trying to play a faster composition and elephant archers really slow you down. I think for me, that means we have to put them into the D tier. Next up, we have the Goths. And the Goths for me are another D tier civilization. Yeah, you get bloodlines, but no thumb ring, no Parthian. Again, it just doesn't fit the Goth composition, and I think you're just missing a bit too much. Coming up next, we have the Hindustanis. And Hindustanis are a civilization that for me are definitely in the B tier. This civ used to have fully upgraded cavalry archers, but after Dynasties of India, they lost Parthian tactics. A move that your boy Jim Shardamas here did not support, and I still think that if they don't have Parthian tactics, they need some kind of cav archer bonus. But that's a video for another time. For right now, you have a cav archer that only misses Parthian tactics, a decent eco bonus to try and boom behind it while you might not have quite as many farms in the mid game because you're making cav archers, but with Hindustanis, sometimes you can get away with that. And you do have a light cavalry unit that does extra damage versus buildings. And I like this quite a lot because with cavalry archers, you're typically not able to destroy buildings very easily. And so having a light cavalry unit that can do it can help you destroy some production buildings from your enemy and ultimately in the late game try to win. Cavalry archers for the Hindustanis I think are decent at mid and late game, but they're just not great at any of those phases. Now we have the Huns, and the Huns are going to be S tier. The cost discount you get from cavalry archers is great for fielding the unit, plus not having to build houses gives you even more wood to spend. And then the fact that your stables work faster means that you get technologies like bloodlines and husbandry a bit easier. And then you can also spam hussars in the late game, so you can keep your cavalry archers that do miss the last archer armor upgrade at the blacksmith. You can keep on the back line, and the fact that you're saving so many resources on them anyways, it's kind of like being able to get a heavy cavalry archer that's quite good, but for the price of a foot archer, and that's just fantastic. I also think that having the trebuchet accuracy is really good as well, because again, cavalry archer light cav armies don't usually have the melee power to take out production buildings as fast. So having those really accurate trebuchets to win those treb battles is, I think, a really strong point of the civilization. Looking at the Italians now, I think Italians are a nice D tier civ. In the mid game, I think that you have all the armor upgrades and thumb ring, bloodlines, etc. for your cavalry archers, so you can play cavalry archers with Italians in the mid game. But I think you miss heavy cavalry archer, and you miss Parthian tactics, so you don't really have any bonuses pushing towards them. So at the end of the day, I think D tier is about high as we can rank them. Now Japanese are pretty good. I think you have to put Japanese in the A tier, one of the few civilizations in the game to get fully upgraded heavy cavalry archers. Additionally, your building bonus with the resource camps are 50% off. It's a really nice boost to your mid-game cavalry archer composition. Now, I think in the late game, it gets a little bit trickier to play with Japanese cav archers because despite getting all the upgrades, your support unit in the light cavalry line is mediocre at best, missing out on the hussar upgrade and the last armor upgrade. Now, you can still play cav archer light cav, but it's just not going to be as strong as some other civilizations. You can try and be unorthodox with Japanese and try to use things like forward towers to keep some of those, maybe like pikemen or other units off of your cavalry archers. And you do have fully upgraded elite skirmishers of your own that you could play for a cav archer skirm composition, and you have great infantry you can mix in as well. So it's not like you don't have options outside of the light cavalry line, but that is the best pairing with your heavy cavalry archer. And the fact that you are, kind of pedestrian there, I think means that we can't put them in, say, the S tier. And they're probably an A tier civ, honestly, kind of at the limit, but I think we got to give it to them. Next up, we have the Khmer. Khmer for me are a D tier civ, and one of the strange ones here, because you're only missing thumb ring. But missing thumb ring is massive because it means that your cavalry archers are bad in the mid game and bad in the late game. They just can't hit anything. And so for that reason, as strange as it is to say a civ that's only missing one technology there is going to be D tier, and especially for a civilization that gets great hussars. I mean, if the Khmer got thumb ring, cav archers would be way on the menu. This would easily be an A tier cavalry archer civ. But that's the power of missing thumb ring, folks. Next up, we have the Koreans. Koreans are really interesting now. 50% archer discount on the wood for an archer means that cavalry archers could be a pretty cost-effective option. But you do miss bloodlines, you do miss Parthian tactics. And it's probably not the army composition that you want to play because you don't really have good light cavalry for supporting units. For me, it's C tier. If you can keep them in the back line and it's strictly a fire support unit, okay. But in the mid game, that doesn't usually happen. You're usually trying to hit and run, and oftentimes in the late game, you have to be able to stand and deliver at some point. So for me, unfortunately, Koreans, probably not the best, though we do have to consider the War Wagon. And the War Wagon for me, I think takes it up to the B tier. See how I did a little shake and bake on you? War Wagon is a great cavalry archer class unit, very, very strong. It's been nerfed a little bit. We've seen recently getting, I think, a little bit higher cost and some -1 cavalry archer damage on its armor. That being said, still very strong. So Koreans, ultimately, we got to put them in the B tier, but for very different reasons. To me, what keeps them out of A tier is that you really just don't have the typical army composition, and they're expensive, and to try to make them on those maps where cavalry archers are really at their best, I think it's kind of tough. But on maps like Nomad, maybe some closed maps, I think they're quite good. I think they're probably actually one of the higher civilizations in the B tier. Next up, we have the Lithuanians. Lithuanians are another civilization that, as strange as it is to say, I think they're B tier. You're only missing Parthian tactics. But the fact that Hindustanis and Lithuanians, to me, have the same rating of cav archers is crazy. But again, that's the subject for another video. Lithuanians also, with the free food with town centers bonus, can be quite strong, and you have a nice hussar unit to pair with your cav archers. So This is really one of the more underrated Cavalry Archer civs in the game. Next up we have the Magyars. The Magyars to me are an easy S tier civ. You have really strong light cavalry units that you can pair both the unique unit Magyar Hussar and in cheaper Hussars, and they're cheaper throughout the game. In Castle Age, you have the new team bonus where you can create Cav Archers faster, which is fantastic. And you also in the late game have Recurve Bow, which can give your Cavalry Archers +1 attack and +1 attack and range. And that means that I think you probably have the best Cavalry Archers in the game. Though there's probably some other civs later on this list that might have a thing or two to say about that. But for now, easy S tier for Magyars. Looking at the melee now, it's pretty bad. I mean, you do get Thumb Ring, but you miss Bloodlines. You miss Parthian Tactics. And you miss Heavy Cavalry Archer. You put all that together, and you just don't really have a lot going for this unit. So I think it's got to be the F tier. Now, Malians are interesting. You do get Heavy Cavalry Archers with Bloodlines, but no Bracer. No Parthian Tactics. But those are just late game upgrades, so you could play them in the mid game with Bloodlines and Armor. I think that we can go ahead and put them in the D tier, but no, they're very situational. Next up we have the Mongols, and I think the Mongols do make it into S tier, but they're really riding on the backs of their Mangudai. What I would encourage you to think about with the Mongols is that the Mangudai is one of the best unique units in the game, and if you compare it to a unit, say like the Camel Archer, which it dies to 1 versus 1, the Mangudai, with its bonus against Siege, the Civilization bonus of Cavalry Archers firing faster, it just has a lot more versatility than the Camel Archer. For me, I think that really is what helps you get in the S tier. You also have great Hussars to pair it with, and you have a really nice start to your early game, and the fact that you also have Step Lancers with the Mongols, I do think can help enable you to transition to, say, Mangudai later, and then by opening with a cost-effective unit earlier. There's really something to be said for that. I just think the Mongols are just a little bit more versatile with their compositions, and plus, if you do want to play regular Cavalry Archers in the mid-game, you can definitely do that and they fire faster, which is really good. Something I wish that we saw with the Mongols is a better differentiation from when to use their regular Cavalry Archers and the Mangudai, because Mangudai just feels superior in all ways. They're just a little bit harder to get to, and I'd like to see Mongol Heavy Cavalry Archers have their own distinct niche in the game. Coming up next, we have the Persians, and Persians to me are very frustrating as a Cavalry Archer too, because if you know anything about the historical civilizations that comprise the in-game Persians, you would know that Persians should have top-tier Cavalry Archers. But the truth is that you get all the upgrades except you miss Bracer. Missing Bracer is not good. I think we could put them in the C tier because you have fully capable Cavalry Archers in the mid-game. But missing Bracer hurts a lot, and that's a problem. You do have good Hussars to pair them with later, but again, there's also nothing special about your Hussars. So again, one of the more disappointing Cavalry Archer civs from what it could be, but that's for the devs to figure out. Maybe they will give them some bonuses when they come around. I've already made my predictions about that. Let's see what happens. Developers, the ball's in your court. Next up we have the Poles, and I think the Poles have to go into the D tier because in the late game, you're missing Parthian Tactics and the last armor, so you're only getting 2 Pierce Armor late. One of the really strange Cavalry Archer civs that has that, but you do get Bloodlines and Thumb Ring, so it's pretty good in the mid game, but you don't have a lot of bonuses helping you either there. So ultimately, I think it has to be D tier. Now, Portuguese are interesting. Portuguese are a civ that misses Parthian Tactics, and you miss the Heavy Cavalry Archer upgrade, so it's starting to sound like a D tier civilization. However, the gold discount that you save on Cavalry Archers in the mid game, to me, I think puts them into the C tier. This is a unit that can be pretty strong and pretty cost effective. I wouldn't invest too much into it, but hey, the gold cost means that you're not investing that much into it. So I think you can play this in the C tier. I've seen Portuguese cavalry archers sometimes used to contest relics on some maps, so I don't know, there's something to be said there. Next up, we have the Romans. The Romans are interesting. You miss Thumb Ring. You get Bloodlines, you get the last armor, no Parthian though. I'm gonna say because you get Bloodlines, even though you miss Thumb Ring, it's still pretty bad though. Like, it's really bad. But I think we can go ahead and put them in the D tier. I think if you do something like where you use the Scorpion gold cost maybe to add Scorpions to your army, like maybe there's something there. But missing Thumb Ring is really bad. Honestly, it's probably a lot closer to F tier than you would think. And you know what? I'm just going to drop it down. Sorry. You know what? Romans have to have something they're bad at in the game. And Cavalry Archers is going to be one of those things. It's just the way it is. Here's we have these Saracens. Saracens, for me, go up into the A tier. Fully upgraded Cavalry Archers, and you have a strong Hussar line. Now, you don't have a really great eco bonus, so you can use the market bonus to your advantage, and that's not nothing. Ultimately, I do think that these Saracens are probably the closest on this list to being an S tier Cavalry Archer civ. I just think you're missing that factor that distinguishes them. There was a time when they used to have their bonus damage for destroying buildings also affect Cavalry Archers. If that were still the case, I put them in S tier. But it's not, so they go in the A tier. Coming up next, we have Sicilians. You don't even get Heavy Cavalry Archer. You don't get Thumb Ring. Sorry, Sicilians, you're going in the F tier. Slavs are civilization where you miss Thumb Ring. Slavic Cavalry Archers also feels kind of like an affront, but that's okay. You know, you can't have everything. I think you get the last armor upgrade, and you get Bloodlines. But missing Thumb Ring is pretty bad. So I think because of that, gotta put them in the F tier. You don't really have a good bonus helping you out there for them. Now, Spanish are one that gets really, 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 really interesting. As strange as this is going to sound, and it strains my ears to say it, I think you have to put them in the A tier. You have Cavalry Archers that are only missing Parthian tactics, like Hindustanis and Lithuanians and Chinese. However, you have the Conquistador as a unique unit, which is one of the best unique units in the game. It's very mobile and essentially plays the same role as a Cavalry Archer. It's great for doing hit and run tactics. It did get recently nerfed just a little bit, so it is worth keeping in mind. You also have fully upgraded Hussars that you can pair with this unit. And not only that, but your blacksmith upgrades don't cost gold. So it makes it a lot easier actually to get to this unit. And in fact, you also have the eco bonus where every technology you research gets you some gold. And I'm going to do a video about that sometime soon, and all I'm going to say is that I think that people are really sleeping on the Spanish gold economy. And I'll just leave it at that. For right now, though, I think we have all of the ingredients of, surprisingly, an A tier civilization, but for perhaps some different reasons than the other civilizations in the A tier. Now, next up, we have the Tatars. And Tatars, to me, is an easy S tier, one of the smoothest, if not the smoothest, Cavalry Archer civilization, with free Thumb Ring and free Parthian tactics. But that's not all. In addition to getting all of your upgrades, you also get the Silk Armor technology in the Castle Age, which gives you +1 Pierce Armor and +1 melee armor as well. So this unit's just stacked. I think the only issue I have with the Tatars is just the fact that it can be a little too tempting sometimes to boom with them and try to get a lot of town centers down so that you can eat the free sheep that you get with the town centers. So sometimes I think you can run into trouble if you play them, but if you play them 1TC and add your town centers maybe a bit more slowly, and then use the food on that sheep to keep those town centers running, I think that the civilization can play out pretty good. So ultimately, Tatars, I think, gotta be S tier. Plus you also get extra line of sight, which isn't a great bonus, but it's not bad either. Teutons to me, oh gosh, have I ever even seen a Teuton Cavalry Archer? You get Bloodlines. but you missed Thumb Ring. Yeah, it's just bad. This is an awful Cavalry Archer, I think. Plus, you only have fully upgraded Scouts as your support unit. Yeah, it's gotta be F tier. Next we have the Turks. And Turks, to me, I'm gonna put them in the S tier. Look, you have fully upgraded Cavalry Archers that can get up to 100 HP after Sipahi. Plus, I think Cavalry Archers, because they're pretty costly, this is where the Turk Gold bonus really helps out, because you can just make Cav Archers at a higher rate than a lot of other civilizations. In addition, the free chemistry is really nice because it's a nice little power spike for your Cavalry Archers once you hit Imperial Age. Additionally, your Hussars are some of the best in the game. They have more Pierce Armor themselves, so when it comes up against those Cav Archer Hussar sort of battles against one another, they're doing pretty well with the Turks. It's just a great civilization, and I feel like it plays out for Cav Archers pretty smoothly. Next up, we have the Vietnamese. The Vietnamese, for me, are going to be in the A tier. Vietnamese, I think, are one of these civilizations that really benefits from the fact that the Heavy Cavalry Archer upgrade now gives you some of that Spearman bonus that Parthian Tactics used to, because the Vietnamese do miss Parthian Tactics, but what puts them in the A tier is the fact that your Cav Archers get more HP, and you have Bloodlines, so you just have a ton of HP on this unit, and that means that your Cavalry Archers are some of the best in the mid game, and are also really tanky in the late game as well. Heavy Cavalry Archers with the Vietnamese, I don't think are appreciated quite enough, but they do see a lot of play, because I think that people are starting to realize just how strong they can be. So Vietnamese, make it in the A tier this time. And last on our list are the Vikings, and there really is no doubt about it. They are a terrible Cav Archer civ, no Heavy Cav Archer, no Bloodlines, no Husbandry, and that's really all you gotta say. And that being said, we've made it to the end of the tier list, and there are definitely some surprise entries higher than you think, and there are some entries that are maybe lower than you might think. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm happy with this list. When I look at this list, what it says to me is that most civilizations in the game should not make Cavalry Archers. It's just the truth of it. A lot of civs in the D and the F tier, and even the civs in the C tier, I think it's pretty situational, or has to do maybe with a more unique unit. I mean, between Bengalis, Burmese, and Dravidians, none of them are making Cavalry Archers per se, but making either regional or unique unit Cavalry Archer class units. So it's not quite the same. Cavalry Archer as a unit is tough to get to, but if you can get to it, it can be very strong because they tend to have damage, durability, and mobility. But like I said, hard to get there. That being said, I think this list really does kind of summarize things pretty well, and here's a mental map for you about where these guys rank. But ultimately, hey, it's just my opinion, and if you, like I said, if you have any comments, definitely leave them in the comment section below. That being said, guys, I'm James59, and I'll see you guys on the ladder. Peace.